Welcome back to the Mid-Year Mitch YouTube channel. In today's episode, I'm repairing the taillight panel on my dad's 67 Camaro RS by stealing some parts from this used taillight panel, so be sure to stick around. So the next area I want to repair on the Camaro is the taillight panel back here. It looks like something ran into this, or the car ran into something, caved this whole area in. They drilled a bunch of holes and used a puller to try to pull this out, and it worked okay. I think they filled it full of mud, but if we take a random license plate and set it up here, you can see that most of that gets hidden anyways by the license plate. So it's not super critical, but at the same time, I don't want to have like a ½ inch of mud to try to make that look somewhat decent. So you can't really get good access to the back of it because there's a piece of like structure reinforcement under there. So I need to cut this top skin out, and it's so dented and caved and stretched and has so many holes that it's just junk. So I was going to try to make a piece, but I went to Spring Carlisle and I actually found a whole taillight panel from a 67 or 68 Camaro. Just take this whole chunk and get it ready to graft onto there. I made my first round of cuts and took out the first part of the skin. You can see it's just really bent up. It's got a lot of Bondo sticking through the back. And I also found this washer inside. I don't know if that was for this license plate hole. Not really sure what you were there for, but that's extra parts now. So now I'm gonna try and hammer and dolly some of this out. So I got a lot of the major damage out, but there's still a lot of low spots and high spots, and this thing is still Swiss cheese. I mean, it would not be ideal to sit here and weld all these holes up, even if you did get all this metal worked out. So I think the best course of action is just to buzz this off somewhere in here. So now I'm gonna strip the paint off of this area so I can figure out where the spot welds are, if there are any in this area, and I'll probably cut this one bigger. So I have my patch tacked in. I spent a lot of extra time to tweak it, to get it so it fits up nice and tight. So it has a nice contour this way, it also rolls this way, and then there are several other rolls in the panel. So I just took my time, made sure I used my compressed air just to keep everything nice and cool. Like I said, making sure everything's flush, and then I just used a putty knife to get in here and to kind of pull the panel in and out just to make sure I had a consistent gap the whole way around, just because this thing just like to twist all around. So I'm really happy with the way this turned out. It's nice and cool. So now I'm going to go and just start welding the whole way around now that it's locked in place, get it dialed in, grind it back, and you'll probably never know that we were back here.
Many hours later.
So after putting several hundred tacks in here, Finally got this thing fully welded up, so now I need to go clean these welds off, but you still have to be careful because you could potentially warp it. So I ground the repair down, used a combination of the Dremel cutoff wheel just to knock off the highs, used a roll lock, 60 grit and then 100 grit, and then I went over it with a DA. And I'm really happy with the way this turned out. It's super straight. It was definitely a good call to repair it down here on the radius. That'll blend super nice. This will blend up in this corner nice, and back here. Didn't warp it, it's really straight, so just need a very little coat of filler, but this thing will turn out really nice. But now I need to go back and chase a couple little pinholes that have popped up, and then after that, do a couple more rounds of cleaning it up, and this thing will be done. But that's gonna do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I have a lot of work to do on this Camaro, so I'll catch you guys later. A good tip for when you're welding this is definitely keep compressed air on hand, so that way I ran a couple beads here, cooled it off, and cooled the metal around it, and that prevented it from warping. You know, because this is it does have a curve this way, but this is a fairly flat panel, so you could warp it. Now up in these areas or along this curve down here, you'd probably be less likely to warp it, but right in here, would probably be pretty easy to warp or start blowing holes in it if you get this too hot. I've had a few people ask what kind of welder I use for my repairs. So I have an Eastwood MIG 135. I've had this for probably 3 or 4 years now. It's been running pretty well. I haven't had any issues with it. Whenever I do sheet metal work, I do run 0.25 wire. I run 0.30 in it whenever I'm doing heavier gauge stuff, which actually looks like I'm running a little bit low on wire. And I use 75-25 gas in here. I just follow the chart to get my welder set up, and I have this little handy tool to tell me the gauge or the thickness of the metal. So it's a really handy tool to have, so you can take your number here, which this is 18 or 19 gauge. You can read off the chart how your machine should be set up, and you can just tweak it from there. Definitely really haven't had many issues getting this car welded together with this welder.